But the important thing here is that our plan for change, which is the steps that we're taking as a government to create a stronger and more resilient economy, are now more important than ever. As the Prime Minister said this morning, the world has changed. We knew that already on security and defence. It's now true on global trade. And that's why we have to go further and faster into investing in the economy and supporting businesses.
OK, so if the world has changed, then surely it's an idea particularly to scrap the increase to employers' national insurance. We've got businesses on their knees. We've got Richard Walker, who was literally a poster boy for the Labour's election campaign. He's the CEO of Iceland, saying that basically you're robbing businesses blind. We're not a piggy bank for Labour, he says. We've got the growth forecast down. We've now been hit by tariffs. We've got the car industry on its knees, and yet still you're taxing businesses.
The political crisis surrounding Keir Starmer has escalated into one of the most significant scandals in British politics. Central to the controversy is a ruling by the UK Supreme Court, which has cast serious doubt on the legality of Starmer's handling of a policy that was supposed to be pivotal in his government's economic recovery strategy. The £22 billion allocated for crucial social welfare programmes and to stimulate economic growth has become the focal point of intense scrutiny, with accusations of severe financial mismanagement. This substantial sum, intended to support vulnerable communities and aid in the country's recovery, now appears to have disappeared without a trace, leaving the public demanding answers. What was meant to be a cornerstone of recovery has instead spiraled into a massive political scandal. The court's unanimous decision against Starmer's policy has sent shockwaves through Westminster. The ruling could spell the end of his political career. Not only was the policy found to be unlawful, but it also exposed an administration that overstepped its boundaries, operating without the necessary oversight or legal safeguards. Despite warnings from legal experts about the potential risks, Starmer's government continued with the policy, which now seems both reckless and unlawful. The Supreme Court's verdict has raised serious questions about how such a large sum could be mismanaged, prompting widespread concern about accountability and governance in the UK. This scandal goes beyond a failed policy. It's a crisis of trust. How can the British people have confidence in a government whose leader has been found to breach fundamental legal principles? The ramifications of this ruling are immense, and Starmer now faces increasing pressure to resign. Public anger is mounting, and the once unified Labour Party now finds itself at a crossroads, with Starmer's credibility hanging by a thread. The scandal has also revealed deeper issues within the government, highlighting a lack of accountability that has plagued the administration. The British public, already fatigued by years of political instability, is demanding transparency and answers. The monarchy, typically neutral in political matters, has also been drawn into the situation, further intensifying the pressure on Starmer. As the scandal deepens and the calls for his resignation grow louder, the future of both Starmer and the Labour Party remains uncertain. The stakes could not be higher as the investigation into the £22 billion continues and public frustration reaches its peak. The Supreme Court ruling on the £22 billion scandal has rocked British politics, placing Keir Starmer's leadership in a precarious position. The court's decision to deem his government's policy unlawful has not only threatened his political career, but has also sparked widespread public outrage and legal scrutiny. Starmer's role as Labour leader has never been more vulnerable. What was once presented as a crucial investment in social welfare and economic recovery now stands as a glaring example of financial mismanagement and constitutional overreach. The £22 billion intended for critical sectors like healthcare, education and housing seems to have disappeared without any proper explanation or accountability. The Supreme Court's ruling highlighted the lack of transparency and oversight in how the government handled public funds, and this failure has significantly eroded the trust of the British public. The court's unanimous decision to condemn the policy has only amplified calls for Starmer's resignation, as many now question whether he is fit to lead the nation after such a monumental error in judgment. What makes this scandal even more damaging is that the ruling carries legal weight, not just political consequences. The involvement of the Supreme Court lends credibility to accusations of corruption and mismanagement, making it harder for Starmer to dismiss the scandal as mere political opposition. As the full scale of the financial disaster comes to light, the pressure on Starmer to account for the missing money and provide clarity on its use is mounting. The British public, weary from years of political controversies, is no longer satisfied with vague responses or attempts at deflection. They demand answers, and the media has seized upon the opportunity to hold Starmer accountable. This ruling has set off a ripple effect, sparking calls for a broader investigation into the Labour Party's financial practices, especially regarding the tracking and allocation of public funds. Political opponents, particularly the Conservative Party, have used this scandal as a key point in their attacks on Starmer's leadership, accusing him of failing the British people by mishandling the country's finances. Within Starmer's own party, cracks are beginning to appear, with some senior Labour figures expressing concerns and even discussing the possibility of a leadership challenge. As the investigation into the missing £22 billion intensifies, Starmer faces growing calls for his resignation. With his credibility severely damaged, the future of his leadership and potentially the Labour Party hangs in the balance. The clock is ticking for Starmer to restore public confidence, but with each passing day, the calls for him to step down become louder. The scandal is rapidly turning into one of the largest financial crises in British political history, and Starmer's political career now rests on how effectively he can navigate the fallout. The fallout from the Supreme Court's ruling on the £22 billion scandal has sent shockwaves through British politics, triggering intense scrutiny of Keir Starmer's leadership and the future of the Labour Party. As the opposition leader, Starmer's credibility has been significantly damaged by the court's unanimous verdict, which declared his government's management of public funds unlawful. The ruling not only exposed major financial mismanagement, but also raised serious concerns about the Labour Party's internal transparency and accountability. The £22 billion, which was intended to support essential economic recovery and social welfare projects, has effectively vanished without any clear justification or explanation, sparking outrage across the country. For many, the loss of such a massive sum of public money represents not just a governance failure, but a betrayal of the British people's trust. In the wake of the Supreme Court ruling, public confidence in Starmer's leadership has been shattered, leading to growing calls for his resignation and demands for a full investigation into the handling of the funds. The scandal has become a major flashpoint, with relentless media coverage amplifying every new revelation and intensifying the pressure on Starmer to account for the missing £22 billion sterling. Inside the Labour Party, tensions are rising. Members of Parliament who were once staunch allies of Starmer are beginning to question his ability to lead, with some even discussing the possibility of replacing him. There are concerns that the party's chances in the next general election could be severely compromised if Starmer continues to lead. The media's sharp focus on Starmer's role in the scandal has further escalated the political fallout. His repeated attempts to deny or downplay the significance of the court's decision have done little to calm public anger. His refusal to take full responsibility for the situation has only deepened the perception that he is not fit to lead the Labour Party through this crisis. The public's frustration is palpable, with protests demanding transparency and accountability from the government. Whether Starmer can weather the storm is now the central concern for both the Labour Party and the wider British public. With each passing day, the pressure on him grows, and his ability to maintain his position appears increasingly fragile. As investigations into the missing £22 billion continue, the Labour Party's future remains uncertain, and Starmer's political survival is at serious risk. The next steps in this unfolding crisis will determine whether Starmer can regain his credibility or whether this scandal will mark the end of his political career. The £22 billion scandal has shaken Keir Starmer's leadership to its core and triggered a larger conversation about transparency and accountability within British politics. The Supreme Court ruling, which found the government's handling of public funds unlawful, has left not only Starmer's political future hanging by a thread, but also thrown the Labour Party into disarray. The public, once supportive of Starmer's leadership, has now turned against him, and both the people and his own party are demanding answers. The ruling has severely eroded public trust, and protests calling for Starmer's resignation have become increasingly widespread. The political fallout from the ruling is still unfolding, but one thing is clear: the damage to the Labour Party's reputation is profound, and its recovery seems uncertain. The £22 billion, which was intended to fund essential social welfare programs and economic recovery initiatives, has now disappeared without a trace, prompting widespread outrage. The lack of transparency regarding the allocation of these funds has fueled suspicions of financial mismanagement, possible corruption, or even intentional concealment of the truth. As the investigation into the scandal intensifies, more revelations are expected, heightening the pressure on Starmer. What was once a united Labour Party is now facing serious internal divisions. Many MPs once loyal to Starmer are now questioning his ability to lead and have begun discussing the possibility of a leadership challenge. The growing chorus of voices calling for his resignation underscores the gravity of the situation, and the future of the party hangs in the balance. Starmer's repeated denials and refusal to take responsibility for the missing funds have only deepened the public's frustration and skepticism. His credibility has been shattered, and it appears increasingly unlikely that he can regain the trust of the electorate. The British public, disillusioned with years of political turmoil, is now questioning whether Starmer is truly fit to lead the country. The Supreme Court's ruling and the subsequent media scrutiny have exposed the lack of proper oversight within Starmer's administration, making this failure a central point of public anger. As the investigation continues, one central question remains: can Starmer survive this scandal, or will it mark the end of his political career? The fate of both Starmer and the Labour Party is uncertain, and the nation waits for answers. The £22 billion sterling scandal has sent shockwaves through British politics, casting a long shadow over Keir Starmer's leadership and the Labour Party's future. The UK Supreme Court's ruling, which declared the handling of the funds unlawful, has dealt a catastrophic blow to Starmer's credibility. What was meant to be an investment in the nation's recovery and welfare programs has instead turned into one of the most significant political scandals in recent years. The public's reaction has been swift and intense, with many questioning how such a massive sum of money could simply disappear without clear answers or accountability. As more details surface, it's becoming increasingly clear that this was not just a case of mismanagement, but a systemic failure. The public trust that Starmer once enjoyed has evaporated almost overnight, and his attempts to deflect responsibility have only intensified the backlash. The financial mismanagement has become the focal point of the scandal, overshadowing any positive aspects of his leadership. Even some of Starmer's closest allies within the Labour Party are beginning to distance themselves, with calls for leadership change gaining traction. Senior figures within the party are now openly debating the party's future, with some arguing that the only way to recover from this crisis is by replacing Starmer. The scandal has also exposed deep divisions within the Labour Party, with internal disagreements on how to navigate the crisis. Some party members advocate for Starmer's resignation, believing that his continued leadership is untenable, while others worry that removing him could leave the party vulnerable at a crucial time. Whistleblowers within the government have revealed disturbing information suggesting that the £22 billion sterling was misallocated and may have been hidden from public scrutiny. These revelations have only deepened the sense of outrage, prompting calls for a full investigation into the matter. The Labour Party's credibility, already damaged by years of political turmoil, is now at a breaking point. The media, once a supporter of Starmer's leadership, is increasingly turning on him, amplifying public frustration. What was once seen as a promising political agenda now appears to be a severe liability for the party. The focus has shifted from policy to scandal, and the questions surrounding the missing £22 billion sterling have come to symbolize the failures of Starmer's leadership. As the investigation continues and more details emerge, the future of the Labour Party looks increasingly uncertain. With the public demanding answers and internal party divisions deepening, it is unclear whether Starmer can salvage his reputation or if this scandal will mark the end of his political career. The unfolding £22 billion sterling scandal is rapidly escalating, bringing severe political consequences for Keir Starmer and the Labour Party. The Supreme Court's critical ruling has cast a long and damaging shadow over Starmer's leadership, with both his personal integrity and the future of the party now under intense scrutiny. Public outrage has been swift and widespread, with protests erupting throughout the UK demanding transparency and accountability from a government that has failed to provide clear answers. What's even more troubling for Starmer is the growing discontent within his own party. Longtime supporters and key allies, once staunch in their backing, are now distancing themselves from his leadership. They fear that his mishandling of this scandal could permanently damage the Labour Party's credibility. Calls for his resignation have grown louder, with several MPs privately discussing the possibility of a leadership challenge. As pressure mounts, it's becoming evident that the political landscape surrounding Starmer is deteriorating rapidly. Whistleblowers within the Labour government have begun to step forward, exposing the full scale of financial mismanagement and the alleged cover-ups surrounding the missing £22 billion. These revelations have sparked further public outrage, with critics demanding accountability and transparency. The push for a transparent investigation into the handling of the funds has gone beyond a mere political necessity. It has become an essential step for any hope of restoring trust in the government. Once united under Starmer's leadership, the Labour Party now faces internal fractures, with divisions deepening as members struggle to reconcile their loyalty to their leader with the growing scandal. For many, the question is no longer whether Starmer can survive this scandal, but whether the Labour Party itself can weather the storm. The future of the party now hangs in the balance, with some members wondering if a change in leadership is the only way forward. Amidst the crisis, King Charles, traditionally a figurehead removed from political matters, has found himself drawn into the drama. Speculation is growing about whether the monarchy will take a more active role in addressing the scandal, which has already shaken the public's faith in the government. As the situation continues to unfold and new details emerge, it's becoming clear that Keir Starmer's political future and the future of the Labour Party may be irrevocably damaged by this scandal. See you later.